I remember when the Middletown Mall was built in Fairmont, and when it was the place to shop. It was the place to shop. Folks flocked in from Morgantown and Clarksburg and Bridgeport, West Virginia, and from Grafton and from Philippi and from all over to shop at the Middletown Mall. Retirees would gather there on the bench every day to swap stories and talk politics and watch the women go by as they waited for their wives to finish shopping. 2 decades later, the Middletown Mall was practically barren of stores and shoppers as well. I remember the old Mountaineer Mall down on the Greenbag Road in Fairmont. Some of you, having been in the Fairmont area and all, the mall was out on the Greenbag Road, but it suffered a similar fate as the anchor stores at the mall moved to a more favored location at the new Morgantown Mall just off of I-79 on the Westover exit there in Morgantown. I guess it's been a month or so ago now, I heard on the news and read in the paper that the Ohio Valley Mall over here in St. Clairsville is getting ready to start an expensive renovation project. Millions of dollars to help attract more customers and to keep their base stores in place. You know, consumerism is a fickle business that now seems to favor shopping complexes like the one up at the Highlands, which has one anchor store. These places usually have one anchor store. For here it's Cabela's, and then are surrounded by satellite stores. In our text today, we move to the biggest mall in Jesus' day, the courtyard of the temple. And we watch Jesus take the business community down. What is it that caused Jesus to become so angry that he became a holy terror? It can only be one thing: injustice. Injustice. You see, the sacrificial system at the temple had evolved over the centuries into an efficient machine for fleecing the rich and the poor alike, earning a great deal of money for the temple insiders who ran it. If you went on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, your goal on that pilgrimage was to sacrifice an animal according to the law of Moses. You could bring your own sacrificial animal, of course, but many who had journeyed from great distances found it much easier to purchase a beast locally at a steep price. The law said that you had to present a perfect animal without mark or blemish. And unless you purchased a pre-approved animal within the temple precincts, you had to bring your own offering before an inspector who would tell you whether it met the grade or not. And the inspectors were in cahoots with the animal sellers, who knew how to grease their palms with silver. And rarely did they grant approval for a sacrificial animal brought from home. And if that wasn't enough, there's something else. If you journeyed to foreign lands, you had coins jingling in your pocket, which would have been imperial coins, engraved with the emperor's likeness. And such graven images violated the second commandment, and so were forbidden within the temple precinct. So in order to buy a sacrificial animal, you first had to exchange your pagan coins for shekels, for Judean money that bore no image. And the money changers who had a monopoly charged exorbitant commissions to exchange your money. But the poor pilgrims, they had no recourse. They got them coming and they got them going. These temple merchants did. And the reason that Jesus raged through the temple had nothing to do, I would suggest, with the proximity of money to a place of worship, as some commentators and preachers have suggested. His anger was sparked by injustice, folks. The fact that the temple had been transformed to a corrupt machine for cheating pilgrims out of their life savings. Malls come and go. Businesses come and go. 6 years ago, I went through a year-long training called Incubator. And we met one day a month for 8 hours. For 12 months we met like that. And between those sessions we read lots of books. Probably 20 or 25 books in that year's time. And I remember one of those books that we read was by, and they were all kinds, but one of them that I remember was by business author Jim Collins. And his book was entitled Good to Great. And it was aimed at profiling companies that had made the leap from just being good companies to great companies. Companies that were built to last. And absent from that list, I remember, were companies like General Electric and Coca-Cola and some of the other old school standards. Some of the great businesses that Collins profiled in his book were Circuit City, Fannie Mae, Philip Morris, and other businesses that didn't make the list but were no less standard fixture in the conscience and the checkbook of American consumers. Where you could always rent a movie at Blockbuster, or stop in at Borders to browse for a book. Turns out that a decade after that book was written in 2001, by the way, a decade after that book was written, some of these high-profile companies like Circuit City and Blockbuster and Borders are out of business. Fannie Mae got a bailout, and I saw in the news again the other day, I don't remember whether it's $5 billion or $500 billion more dollars that they're asking for. Good to great, give me a break. Philip Morris is a pariah in society, as that's deemed by many people. And there are other companies that are heading toward the edge of the abyss. And so in 2009, Jim Collins, contrite, I might say, Jim Collins, followed up his book, Good to Great, with a new book titled How the Mighty Fall. How the Mighty Fall. And Collins proposed that there were five stages to the decline of a once great company. Now, in the class that I was attending, parallels were drawn between good and great and how the church could once again prosper in America. From How the Mighty Fall, I believe parallels could be drawn to the demise of some churches in America. So I want to share with you, just very briefly, Collins' 5 stages for the decline of a once great company. Stage 1. Hubris, born from success. The successful company begins to believe its own press and becomes enamored with itself. And the company fails to question its practices and its products and their relevance when conditions change. Stage 2. The undisciplined pursuit of more. The company strays from the disciplined creativity that made it great in the first place, making leaps outside the original realms of success. Stage 3, denial of risk and peril. Leaders begin to deny that anything is wrong and refuse to hear bad news, putting a positive spin on everything. They blame external factors instead of taking responsibility. Stage 4, grasping for salvation. The company begins to look for quick fixes to its problems and begins grasping at straws to stop the decline, hiring a charismatic leader, radical restructuring, a revolutionary product, and on and on and on the list could go. Stage 5 of a company in decline. Capitulation to irrelevance or death. In this stage, the company's spirit and financial strength have eroded to the point of despair, and leaders and employees give up hope, and the institution slides into insignificance and eventual death. Now let's get back to the Jerusalem moment. Back to the Jerusalem Mall. Jesus' words were not only prophetic, but a stark reminder that any institution that claims to be of God is doomed to failure if it refuses to pay attention to God's own core purpose and values. Any institution claiming to be of God is doomed to failure if it refuses to pay attention to God's own core purpose and values. And what's going on in the shadows of the temple altar is symptomatic of a huge problem in temple worship. And by the time Jesus walked up to the temple that day, it was clear that that temple was just a shell of its former glory and mission. Instead of being a holy place, it had become a shopping mall, among other things. So Jesus calls in the note and he forecloses. He walked right in and he drove out the sellers, which effectively shut down the temple's sacrificial system for a brief period of time. He announced a foreclosure on the temple, but like a passionate visionary leader, he announced that a new initiative would take place. The temple would be destroyed, and folks, we know it was. In 70 AD, it was totally destroyed. But he said that a new one would be raised up, the temple of his body. Jesus showed his disciples that the path from good to great was the path of suffering and self-denial, and not the wide road of the temple that led right off the cliff. This passage is about much more than selling in the church. It's far more than that. And Jesus' temple action, folks, challenges us to look within our own churches to determine whether we're being faithful to his call or whether we're ready for a fall. For example, do we measure the church's success in ways that cause us to give hubris rather than humility? Are we so enamored with our own attendance figures, buildings, high-tech gadgets, giving programs, myriad programs, charismatic leaders, the fact that close to 50% of our average worship participate in faith in action, that we fail to question whether what we are doing is what Jesus wants us to do? Are we caught up in the undisciplined pursuit of more people, more facilities, more money, more everything, that we equate bigness with success? Are we growing the institution at the cost of making disciples one person at a time? Do we avoid being prophetic and challenging people with the gospel of the kingdom and instead placate them with pithy quotes and milquetoast theology and warm and fuzzy feelings? Do we blame the secular culture, the economy, the government, or any other outside force for our demise? Are our churches grasping at speedy fixes, new programs, charismatic leadership, better coffee, McDonald's in the church lobby, that we will turn everything around quickly? Does the church have a spirit of hope or a spirit of defeat? Folks, all of these are warning signs that the church is going out of business. And the only way back is to allow Jesus to come in and clean out the mall, making him the center of our worship and the center of our mission. Do we see the church as a self-help institution or a place that preaches Christ and Christ alone? Preaches Christ and him crucified. The church isn't a self-help institution, my friends. We're not here to tell you how to have a happy marriage or to invest your money so that God will bless you and you'll earn threefold over what you've invested or anything else like that. That's not what the church is here for. I remember a pastor, one of the TV pastors, when we were living in Parsons. I was watching him on television, one of the evening services. And he was telling a story. His dad had been the pastor of this big mega church, and he had passed away. Now he was the pastor. He was telling the story about his mom. Oh, his mom wanted an in-ground pool so bad. But his dad wouldn't get her one. But but she wanted one so bad that she determined that she was going to pray and fast before God for an in-ground pool. And so she'd been praying, I don't know about the fasting, but praying for about 3 months, when one of the members of the congregation, who happened to be a well-to-do businessman who just happened to own an in-ground pool company, walked up to her and said, how about me coming over to the house and putting you in a free pool? All of that was attributed to God. I believe God has greater things on His mind than whether we have an in-ground pool or not, or whether our favorite football team wins the Big East Conference, or our favorite basketball team wins the Big East Conference, or whether our favorite stock car driver, who happens to be Kevin Harvick, our nephew works for it, wins the race today. I believe God has bigger things in mind. Than whether we Tebow or not. And God has bigger things in mind for His church, folks. Social issues are great, and there should be times when the church should be addressing social issues. When social issues become the whole focus of the church and we forget Jesus Christ, then we are in trouble. We are in trouble. And I would suggest to you today that the church needs to quit becoming a shopping mall and become an exclusive shop. A shop that preaches Christ and Christ alone. Christ and Christ alone. If this institution, which says that it is ordained by God and sanctioned by God, if we don't start practicing and paying attention to God's core issues again, folks, we're going to be just like Circuit City. I don't care how great Jim Collins said they were. They went kaput. Or Borders, or you just go ahead and name them. Fannie Mae, all of them. Jesus cleaned out the Jerusalem mall. And I truly believe that if Jesus has to clean out His church, He can do that as well. May, if He comes again tomorrow, may He find us being faithful to who He's called us to be. Amen.